every time?
Give it a year or so. In theory, yes.
Yeah.
In theory, yes, absolutely.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, it's always import mode / direct lake, then directory, and then live mode, which no one gets about.
Yeah. Okay, fine.
Cool, no worries. All right, guys, we'll get started in about 30 seconds. Testing. Oh, seriously? Testing.
Not working well.
It's never working, is it?
Yeah, not been working since morning.
All right. All right, guys, come on in. We'll get started now. So, today's presentation, we are going to talk about two tools within Fabric. The first tool is going to be event streams, and the second tool is going to be Data Activator. Collectively, both these tools enable real-time streaming stuff. So this is a bit of a real-time streaming / Fabric presentation. And the reason sort of why I chose this topic is because everybody else talks about Lakehouse. Everybody else talks about T-SQL. Everybody else talks about Spark. So this is the other tools, the tools that people don't necessarily talk about, in my opinion, do not get enough attention in the spotlight because they are pretty amazing tools. Before we sort of dive into it, a little bit about me. So yeah, I am a VP of Data and Analytics at Hitachi Solutions. We are a consulting company. We do a whole bunch of Fabric, Azure, Power BI stuff. So if you are interested in any POCs for Fabric or Azure or Databricks or you name it, me and my team are ready to do that for you, okay? So we are a consulting company. That said, I am personally very invested in community. So while I am running a consulting practice, I do honestly, authentically care about community. Those of you who have been in Toronto long enough would have seen me in all my presentations around the downtown core. So very high level, my passion. I love empowering business users. Up the top left there. I also don't like PowerPoint, as you may have noticed. So if you are interested in what I'm doing with this tool, I can explain it later. But I like my giant. I'm a data engineer and a dimensional data modeler by trade. So that means that when I look at a problem with a business, I don't look at it from necessarily diving into the way you might think. I look at the data, I look at the tables in the application. That's how I understand operational models of the business. And I've been doing that for about 15 years. And I am the moderator of the Power BI subreddit, having built that to 100,000 people, the largest Microsoft analytics community on planet Earth. And I am now also the moderator of the Microsoft Fabric subreddit community as well. And only a few thousand in that, recognizing that Fabric is new, but co-moderating that with Alex Powers from the Microsoft product group. I also love the other ones as well, data engineering, business intelligence. As I said, VP of Data Analytics, that's my career in a nutshell. But this is basically my tool belt. So dimensional data modeling, data engineering, using these products here. Today, we're here to talk about that green looking F on the end, Fabric. But any questions you have around any of the other tools, more than happy to dive in and answer them. But why do you want to listen to me? So I'm just going to give you a quick sort of 1-2 minute walkthrough of my history of Fabric and how I've come to be pretty knowledgeable on the topic. And so it would have been about August-ish, September 2021. I was brought into the Microsoft product group to help conceptualize and ideate on Fabric. And this is obviously way before it was announced. Back then, it was called Project Trident. So Project Trident was the project name for the product that is Fabric. At that point, I was brought into a whole bunch of different programs: Partner Advisory Council, Customer Advisory Board, Enterprise Voice Program, more recently a few others. But long story short, all these boards have enabled me to advise on the product direction of Fabric as we know it today. My team built a lot of world firsts for Fabric. My Canadian team, by the way, in Toronto, built a lot of world firsts for Fabric. So let's hear it from Toronto. We built the world's first metadata-driven orchestration. If you saw Ray's ingest presentation, that's what he was talking about, or metadata-driven orchestration. What else did we do? We did the world's first POC, so the world's first Fabric proof of concept. That was for a company called Hussman in the States. Once again, done by my Toronto team. And that one was actually aired at Microsoft Build in May. And Microsoft Build in May was when Fabric was announced to be public preview. So I think the most important thing that you'll hear about, because you're going to hear a lot about Fabric today, the most important thing to know about Fabric, and a lot of people forget this, is that it is public preview right now. So pay close attention to upcoming conferences because things are going to change a little bit, but yeah, it's currently public preview, guys. So take a lot of this with a grain of salt, especially around production questions. Like if you have questions around what should I do on production, no one knows the answer. No one's put it officially into production, not at least in a large enterprise, okay? And also the other thing to highlight, because it is public preview, there are a lot of best practices that don't exist yet. So you will ask a lot of AVPs questions, they will give you answers. You ask me questions, I'll give you answers. Take everything I say and everything they say with a little bit of a grain of salt, because best practices have not been tested or defined. It's a public preview product. I really want to highlight that, guys. But yeah, that long story short, that's basically it. This is no longer upcoming. The feature roadmap is now publicly available. You can log in as of like 3 weeks ago. Not log in, but you can access the Microsoft roadmap on their website and see which quarters for pretty much 60% of the features are going to be rolled out with Fabric. And Microsoft Ignite's coming up soon. Pretty exciting. So that's basically, me in a nutshell. And in my opinion, sort of why I think you should listen to me with Fabric, because I spent almost 2 years exactly developing this product with Microsoft. And more than happy to obviously answer some questions. Now, with that said, I may accidentally call it Trident. Data Activator was called Reflex. I may accidentally call that Reflex. These are the project names for the products that you now know. So this is a presentation that I gave once before. I think it was a week and a half ago. And I normally would start off with a quick demo. But I've crossed it out because today I'm going to try and do something that is probably not best practice. And let's do it from scratch. So I'm going to try and do a real-time streaming demo using Fabric from literally nothing, greenfield. And given that it's Halloween and given that the mics are not working, given that this product is public preview, this is probably not a wise decision. So whatever, I don't care. So before I go through and start building this architecture from scratch, yeah, mic's not working, it's okay. Yeah, it's not. So before I start going through and building this architecture from scratch, let's sort of give you guys a primer on what is Fabric. Okay, so as you can see, Fabric is a lot of things. Long story short, Fabric is lakehouse architecture. What does that mean? It means that you copy your data to the data lake and that's it. At no point does that data go into storage disk of another piece of compute. That's different from what happens with like T-SQL today for the most part, where you take a copy of your data in a data lake and you copy it again into your data warehouse. It's redundant, it's slow. Immediately your data is stale. So the whole concept of Fabric is built around this lakehouse architecture. Now, unfortunately, Microsoft has called a feature inside Fabric Lakehouse. So they've kind of muddled up technology with concepts. But what we can see here, high level with Fabric, is that we have data. We can bring it in somehow. We can save it in a data lake, which I call one lake. And at that point, all of these pieces of compute hanging off it are ephemeral. They're serverless, which means that when you hit F5 and SSMS, for argument's sake, at that second, Fabric will spin up the data warehouse, allocate the data from the data lake, distribute, analyze the data, aggregate it, return the results set, and then most importantly, shut the data warehouse down for the most part. So that's how all these technologies are designed conceptually, to spin up, query your data, and shut it down. Do I need the mic? Am I loud enough? No, I don't. I'm getting a firm no. I apologize for the people in the front row. So that's high level what Fabric is. This concept of loading data to your data lake, and that's it. Every time you analyze it, all those pieces of compute are ephemeral. They spin up, they query, they shut themselves down. It's a beautiful concept. Thanks to our friends at Databricks for really pushing it if they're in the room. But here today, we're going to talk about two tools, as I mentioned, Event Streams and Data Activator, the two tools most people don't talk about. Event Streams has been in public preview for quite a while. Data Activator entered public preview 2.5 weeks ago, I think. So this Data Activator product is brand new. So conceptually, let's talk about it before I start building. Event Streams is a way to ingest streaming data and do some transformations. Obviously, you save it into your one lake for the most part. Data Activator is a product for actioning your data. So I think conceptually, Event Streams is pretty straightforward. It's a pipe. It's a pipe of data. Just give me data, throws it in. Data Activator / Reflex is what it used to be called, doesn't really have a product on the market, like a direct equivalent on the market that I'm aware of, at least anyway. I heard there was an old Click product that used to do it, or MicroStrategy. So I want to spend maybe a minute or two talking about Data Activator because it's actually quite hard to explain because it is, I can't say, oh yeah, it's like this Microsoft product because there really is no equivalent in Microsoft. You can argue that it's a little bit similar to Power Automate or Logic Apps. Okay, so start there if you know those products. But long story short, the way it works is that you've got data on the left. Could be Power BI tables with measures in them. It could be, in this case, event streams. It could be, and that list will grow. It could be any piece of data in Fabric. Then using Data Activator, you set up a way to monitor that stream. And you set up a trigger that will alert you when some rule triggers, basically. So it's a way to Data Activator is a way to monitor your data estate and then perform some action based on a trigger. So let's say you've got a table with a column of temperature data. You can set up a rule that says if the average of that temperature over the last 10 minutes is greater than 5 degrees, that would be the trigger. Then do an action. So call one of these things. So it's a pretty simple tool in scope, right? It doesn't pretend to be this giant mammoth tool with all these bells and whistles. It's pretty defined in its scope. Okay. So right now today, these two are available, Teams and Outlook. Power Automate is not currently available, but once this comes out, that's going to be your go-to for pretty much everything. So before I go through and sort of dive into the demo, or the actually setting this up, I'll pause for a moment. Are there any questions on, I guess, Fabric, event streams, or Data Activator? Yes. I would say less sophisticated Power Automate, but that's why I like it, because it doesn't do a lot, but what it does damn well. And if you know product design, that's exactly what you want. Any other questions? We're all geniuses. We're going up.
Yes, can you use it to create, because when it integrates with Outlook and you use it, let's say, to create schedule events.
So integrate with Outlook, you said, to create schedule alerts.
If I see, because you are pushing data to Outlook, but from the streaming, I don't want to create 5,000 meetings, right, in the Outlook. So how does it integrate with Outlook?
Yeah, I'll get to that. So right now, all it does is send emails to Outlook.
Okay.
Very, very simple. So the question was like, how does it integrate to Outlook? It right now just sends emails to Outlook. But if anyone knows this guy, you can do anything, anything in the world. Interestingly, I don't think this is. Is there a mic in here? I mean, this video is recorded. So that's why I'm going with the mic. So I don't know if this is public knowledge, but the engine that Reflex is that Data Activator is actually built on you don't know it. There's no Azure equivalent. It's actually built on an Office product, is what I've heard. So the Office, there's an engine behind the Office that does all the alerting between the different tools. I heard that Will Thompson, who owns this as a product manager, he took that engine and sort of repurposed it to create Data Activator. So it's an interesting technology that they've used. I don't know how it works. But anyway, live demo. So I got half an hour to do this. So what I'm going to do today for my live demo, and I'm not going to go through this whole section here. So don't bother reading the little boxes, but very high level. I got my phone right here. What I'm going to do with my phone is I'm going to stream some telemetry from my phone. And I'll actually show you in a moment what that looks like. It's going to go through something called Azure IoT Central. I do not want to spend time on this. It's not the point. That's something that we can push aside. And that's going to funnel my data into Event Stream, which is then going to funnel my data into Data Activator. And then we can walk our way through these sort of steps here and create a trigger. And what I'm actually going to use is my magnetometer on my phone. I got my little charger. So in theory, what I'd like to set up is as soon as I put my magnet on the back of my phone, I like to receive an email. Now you can imagine lots of use cases for that. Someone swiping in, manufacturing assembly lines, things passing certain checkpoints. That's sort of the scenario that I'd like to build out very quickly. So the cake is somewhat baked though. So I do have Azure IoT Central up and running. So let's start here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip to actually the Teams call, which I'm on for this recording. I'm going to see if I can turn on my camera for everyone to see. Oh, can I spotlight myself? That would be weird. Sure, why not? Okay, well, I can't spotlight myself. Well, there goes that idea. Let me load up the camera app. And I actually don't like the camera app because it's not going to show the camera in the right. It's not going to mirror it. So you might need to use your imagination. Of course, I've got Teams running, so I can't do it. How do I get my face full screen on Teams? It's not doing it. Anyway, so what I'll do, I'll walk around. So we have an application here, and it's just generating a whole bunch of telemetry. Okay, and you can see lots of numbers changing. I mean, you can't see, but there's lots of numbers changing in my phone right now. We've got things like accelerometers, barometers, gyroscopes, magnetometers. This is a whole bunch of telemetry getting generated from my phone. My battery level is on here. Okay, so this is an application called IoT PNP. Okay, don't worry about the application, but it's just generating a lot of stuff from my phone, okay? So that's there on the left. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to load up Azure IoT Central. Let's copy that URL, paste that here. And I'm just going to show you very quickly, once again, Azure IoT Central is not the point of this presentation. We don't care about Azure stuff. Everything's Fabric now. But I just sort of want to go through and make sure that this is set up correctly. Give this a minute. And so what I have set up in Azure IoT Central is my phone. Let's make sure this is working. 11:16. Excellent. So I mean, I know you can't see it, but just down here, 11:18. Oh, that's weird. Apparently, my phone's sending time information from the future, so that data is flowing into Azure IoT Central. So we can see data flowing and these charts are populating. Pretty cool stuff. Okay, so that's what's happening here. Now, what I need to say is, hey, Azure IoT Central, that data in those graphs, I want you to shoot it to a destination. Okay, and that's going to be when we get into Fabric with our event stream. So I'm going to go back to Azure IoT Central. I'm going to go to my data export. And oh, great, I haven't made this. So I'm going to click new destination. Actually, you know what? Before I get there, let me load up Fabric. So I'm currently in IoT Central. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to log into Fabric super quick right now, create an event stream. And I'm also going to create Reflex's Data Activator as well. So I'm just going to quickly create those tools because I need to reference them for this demo. So let me go to my workspace. All right, blank workspace, nothing in there. So more options. This is Fabric, by the way, for those of you who have not seen it in this morning's demos. I'm going to create two things. First and foremost is my event stream. So event stream. Where SQL, Saturday. Let's go 2023. Okay, so I'll give that a minute. But that's now generating this application here, okay? And I actually need that to tell this guy where to send the data. So that's why I'm installing this, so I can say, hey guy, send that data here. Okay, so that's getting set up right now in Fabric. We'll give it a minute or so. So not going to go into a lot of detail on event streams. It's actually both of these products are very simple. But I'm just going to go through and create a new source for event stream. And you can think of a source as on this side here. So it's going to accept data. Okay. So let's go back here. And in this case, I'm going to create an Azure Event Hub source. I'm going to give it a name. Where are we? Actually, no, my bad. I lied. I'm going to create a custom app. I don't want that. I'm going to create a custom app, give it a name, press OK. Now we'll give this a couple of seconds. And what this tool is actually doing right now is it's created all these things for me. And I'm not going to go into too much detail, but we've got Kafka, AMQP, and Event Hubs. These are just different protocols, different ways to ingest streaming data. What I'm interested in right now is Event Hub. And what I need specifically is I need to go to, and I actually changed this GUI on me, by the way, like 2 days ago. What I actually need is this connection string. I'm going to go here, show that, click copy. It's on my clipboard. So now what I've done is I've created event stream. I've created a big mouth. I've copied the mouth's what we call connection string to my clipboard. I'm going to say, hey guy, any data you get from this arrow, send it to that arrow. So let's go back to here. I'm going to create this data export, a new destination. I'm just going to paste in that connection string, give it a name, and hit save. And my phone does actually time out, so I've got to make sure I keep it active. Okay, so that's done. And now I need to set up an export rule, and I'll talk about this in a minute. And my destination is going to be the thing that I just made, a name. Yep, and give it another name and hit save. Okay, so we'll give that a minute. But what we've done is I said, hey, IoT Central, anything flowing into this device, send it to that Event Hub endpoint in event stream. And that should take just a minute or so to start flowing. So this is where things get a little awkward because data does take a minute or so to get flowing, but I do have my phone doing its thing, showing, sending telemetry. So in about a minute or so, we should hopefully see some data starting to appear down here, but it does take a minute or so. So while we're waiting for that, I mean, I know we've done quite a few things. We've flipped around between two tools, right? So we've installed Event Stream, and I've told this tool, anytime you receive data, send it to this custom app. Are there any questions on what I've done so far while we wait for this to play? Try it. Yeah, question. Correct. So this is going to be streaming through as JSON. You want to specify what the source will be, what it's going to receive.
Maybe use a new function as in,
An Azure function.
yeah.
Hey, data. Thank goodness. Sorry. Sorry.
No, yeah, can we use a new function? The same, like in between IoT and then.
Yeah. So can we use an Azure function between IoT and event streams? I guess. I would say no. You don't necessarily need to. Like, an Azure function is basically a way to insert code into a pipeline, C#, PowerShell, whatever it is. In this scenario here, you don't really need to unless it's a generator, but you can kind of argue that this is my console app right now. This is my Azure function generating and sending the data. In IoT streaming, that's a lot of the time where your console app would sit around sending the data. Once it hits here, it's pretty clicky, draggy, droppy. You don't really need to do a lot. You need to do some things in terms of filtering and reducing your data, but yeah, not a big need for Azure functions unless it's around here, but I don't need that in this case. So fortunately, thank goodness, the demo gods are shining above me today. So I do have some data coming through, and this is actually live data from my phone. See if I can scroll across. Is there a timestamp? Oh, so this will be in UTC, by the way, so good to do the math. But yeah, 3 o'clock, right? So yeah, so UTC, it's 11 o'clock now, 3 o'clock. So this is live data coming through from my phone right now. I'm not going to go through and show you what it is, but at a very high level, it's this telemetry column. There's a lot of the things that I walked around and awkwardly showed everyone what it looks like, okay? And so what we're going to try and do is we're going to try and pass out some of that data. And as I said, make a rule that detects when a certain number or threshold is breached, and then send an email. Okay, so right now, we just have data flowing through my phone into here, which is great. We have not told Event Stream where to send that data just yet. Right now, it's just sitting this side here and doing that. That's where we're at. So let me log back into Fabric, and much like oh god, and much like before, much like before, I'm going to skip ahead. I'm going to create the data activator, because what I need to do is I need to tell this guy to load it to data activator, and I can't tell it to load it to something that doesn't exist. Okay, so I'm going to create this data activator thing in Fabric, and then we're going to say, hey, Event Stream, that data that you're building up right now, just shoot it to data activator. So let's go back to Fabric. And this is where I was playing around with it last night to test this demo at 10 p.m. and it broke. So Microsoft made a big change. So here's, once again, all of the tools in Fabric. Lots of good stuff coming through. In this case here, we're interested in Reflex Preview. And this just spins it up without even asking for a name, but whatever. So we'll give this a minute. And so there we go. So now Reflex is up. Now if I show the workspace, if I go back to my SQL Saturday workspace, okay, just 2 things. Event Stream, which we've already discussed, and there's a new thing that I just made at 11:24 a few seconds ago. So now I can go to Event Stream and I can tell it to send data to Reflex. Okay, so let's go back to Event Stream. And I need to set a destination. So there are quite a few options here, by the way. Lakehouse is, actually Azure Functions. In theory, you should be able to, I haven't done it myself, but in theory, custom app, I assume, maybe, don't quote me on that. I've never used it for a destination. Lakehouse, the concept of Lakehouse is everything funneling straight to the data lake. That is Lakehouse, that's what it's designed to do. Unfortunately, Microsoft is not necessarily adhering to that principle of Lakehouse. And so I can send data straight to a KQL database before the data lake. I can send data, in this case, straight to Reflex before a data lake. I don't necessarily agree with that on principle, but you can do that. And so there are some scenarios where compute engines will talk to compute engines in Fabric. It's, in my opinion, not a great design, but things will change eventually. So in this case here, I'm just going to shoot it to Reflex, which once again is Data Activator. Just to remind everyone, Reflex, Data Activator, they're the same thing. Reflex was the project name for the product called Data Activator. So question up the back.
Yeah, can you fork at this point? Can you send it to Reflex and dump it to the link?
Yeah, we have time. I'll do that. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, question was, can we fork it? Can we have two destinations? Absolutely. And I'll try to do that time permitted. So Reflex destination name, give it any name. You have to select the workspace so it knows which Reflex resource to or item to find. Oops, SQL Saturday. And then it should come up with one option, which is the thing we made at 11:24 and 34 seconds, and click add. Okay, so in a minute, that's going to start streaming from my phone into Reflex. I'll give it a minute, and then I'll flip to Reflex, and I'll show you sort of what it looks like at that end. Cool. All right. So it says it's active. I'm assuming data is streaming. So let's now go to Reflex. Now, just as a heads up, the Reflex GUI has changed a lot in probably the last month. And I actually last night had trouble finding things. So maybe you guys can help me a little bit here. So I'm just going to click refresh just on the so let's load up Reflex. Let's load it up from scratch. Because I loaded this GUI up last night. I'm like, how do I access my stream that I've already got flowing in there? I've got, by the way, I can try to go to design. Oh, there we go. Oh, good. It works. I had to refresh. Good. I did that last night. It didn't work. So this is good. So we're now in the world of Reflex. And let's go back to our diagram. So what we've done is I just made that now. And so now we have data ones and zeros funneling up that red line. Where does that red line go? To Data Activator. And that's the screen that I'm at right now. So let's go back to Data Activator. Reflex, whatever you want to call it. And there we go. So we have data flowing through. So let's change this to the last 5 minutes. Once again, this is UTC, by the way. Just, that's actually 11 a.m. And this is sort of the landing screen, the landing page of Reflex. And what we have here, and I'm going to start maybe spending a few minutes talking about the breakdown, the conceptual breakdown of Reflex, the product. What we're looking at right now is an event. Okay, an event. As you can see, you could have multiple events. Manufacturing line, refrigerator temperature, all sorts of different things of data flowing into Reflex. I just have my iPhone data, which is that guy up the top left. And as we can see, that is the data. That is the data that's flowing through right now. And in theory, you should be able to see the row count increase. Yeah, so top right, see the 1444? That's my phone streaming data right now into Reflex. And I'm not sure why it's not doing it, but normally it would flash green as new rows come in. It's a shame it's not doing it. It looks really cool when it does that. And yeah, here's just a count of events from my phone flowing into Reflex for the last 5 minutes. So before we go through and sort of dive further into Reflex, so we're going to go pretty deep. We're going to go through and create all of these things. I do want to pause. Any questions on event stream that we've seen and a little bit around Reflex? So I'm not sure. If anyone knows the answer, feel free to say it. I haven't dove into the documentation to figure out. The question was, how much history does it save? I would say, frankly, that Reflex isn't designed to necessarily store history. And it probably has a retention, I'm guessing, of 90 days, 7 days or something. I actually don't know, I'll be honest. Yeah, haven't had a look at that. Yes? That's right.
So can we connect with multiple workspaces within a single space? Can you refer to multiple data activators?
Can Reflex maybe receive data from it? So can we connect to another workspace?
Can be from multiple.
From another workspace? So yeah, so in event stream, you can define a Reflex in another workspace. Was that the question? So if I've event stream workspace A, I can send it to Data Activator or Reflex in workspace B. Yeah, okay, yeah, you can do that. Yeah, that's no truth. Any other questions, guys? Yes.
How is this different?
That's really good. So how is this different from a data factory pipeline? Conceptually, it's not. And this is sort of one of my issues with some things in Fabric. There is some capability overlap. So what is data factory, right? It's batch ingestion for the most part. But at the end of the day, it's moving data from A to B. And an Azure has some transformations too. What's Fabric? Sorry, what is event streams at the end of the day? It's moving data from A to B. Obviously, under the hood, technically speaking, very different products, but conceptually, yeah, they're kind of the same thing. So Data Factory does not do near real-time streaming. Data Factory pipelines and Fabric I would not use it. Well, you can't really use for transformations. There's no mapping data flows in it. Whereas this does, I didn't show it to you, but Fabric Event Streams does have a transformation screen. So you can do transformations on the stream with this. Data Factory, you need to set up your schedules, set up your triggers. There's no concept of that in event streams. It just ingests constantly. It's constantly running. So I say those are some of the big differentiators between this and Data Factory, mainly around real-time streaming, scheduling, and architecturally, technically, just completely different products, but conceptually very similar. Cost benefit. Well, I mean, I wouldn't look at it from a cost benefit. I'd say that Data Factory, 15 minutes left. Awesome. I would say that Data Factory, like a different use case is what would define it, right? If you're looking at batch or quasi near real time, I wouldn't call that. If you're looking at batch and maybe half an hour increments, maybe 10-minute increments, you'd look at Data Factory. Okay. If you're looking at sub 5 seconds, you're looking at event streams. Or structured streaming. Yeah, it's use case driven, not necessarily cost or anything else driven. Yes.
Stream analytics.
Yes. So, question was stream analytics. More of a statement. Event streams is a combination of two tools: event hubs to ingest, and what I haven't shown you is what did you say? ASA, Azure Stream Analytics.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I didn't show you is a screen that allows you to transform data, which is what Azure Stream Analytics does. Unfortunately, right now you cannot transform to Data Activator. Okay. However, if I go and create a lakehouse sync, I'll have the option. Okay. So I'll actually show this. So yeah, that's basically what Event Streams is. It's a streaming engine with a little bit of transformation from Azure Stream Analytics. If I click plus, click Lakehouse. I haven't got a Lakehouse made. SQL Saturday. You can actually create in line here, Lakehouse. Well, you used to be able to. Why can't I do this? You used to be able to create a Lakehouse. No, I don't know. You can create a table, but just trust. Oh, here we go. Open event stream. So let's got this button here. I don't get that with Reflex. So you can't do inline transformations, but if I click on that, there we go. So, in this scenario here, this is a streaming transformation tool, which is Azure Stream Analytics. Well, gosh, what the heck did I just click on? That's weird. Ugh. Let's go back. I do want to show you guys this. This is one of those things that we had time. I wanted to show loading to another destination and doing transformations. But long story short, in this scenario, what I'd be wanting to transform is selecting columns, so reducing columns, and then because of the way streaming data is structured, I want to reduce columns and then reduce rows by removing nulls in the column I'm not interested in. Let's go Lakehouse.
It's kind of the same concept as windowing that we had with Stream Ad.
This doesn't. So this one here. So these operations don't have that concept. It's just physical data transformations, right? And so, in this case here, as I said, I'd want to probably do a manage fields followed by a reduce. So I'd probably want to do something like this. Once again, I cannot do this when loading to Reflex. I can only do this when loading to Lakehouse. But this is where the product's a little bit. That's fine. Where the product's a little bit buggy. The way these work is that this drop-down box here is going to show some built-in functions. Actually, I haven't looked at it. There are some built-in functions, but the importer schema is, in this case here, I'm managing fields. So I want to. This is my schema that's flowing in from my phone, right? Make sure it's still running. That's flowing in from my phone right now. My device ID of my phone, telemetry. And by the way, thank you for actually bringing this up. I can note that telemetry is nested, right? So see how we're actually going lower, and I'll come back to that in a minute. So maybe I just want that one column for argument's sake. Okay. And then once you get here, you can, filter that one column. They don't have null. I don't think, last time I checked, there's no null concept, so it does not equal 0 is the best I can do. And so yeah, now in theory, it's reducing to one column, and then in that column is going to be a lot of nulls for things that were not a lat. And then you want to reduce those rows with that, and then you're getting quite a lean package getting sent to your Lakehouse. I'm not going to click save on this because I haven't made a Lakehouse yet, but that's Azure Stream Analytics in Fabric, basically, as far as it is today. So let's get into it. So let's go into Fabric. Oh gosh. let's go to Reflex/Data Activator. Once again, same product. And let's go through this list here. I think I've got about 10 minutes remaining. So Reflex. Look at the last 5 minutes. Excellent. Now we're up to 2,000, almost 3,000 rows. So what I need to do right now, I think it's over here. I'm going to step down my little diagram here, and we're going to create an object. So where before I've got a lot of stuff coming from my iPhone. In this case here, sorry, I've got a lot of events coming through, potentially from all sorts of other devices. Now I need to define which one object from that event stream do I want. So I'm going to give this object name, goes here. Key column, it is required, but it's not a primary key column. That's up. So I'm just going to select a device ID. Why you may want to be, maybe you've got 2 phones streaming in. One object would be one phone, and it could be on Twitter. So let's go device ID. Once again, doesn't have to be primary. And I want to save and go to design mode. And now that's going to take me to the next screen, which will let me do some of the next few things. So this next screen that I'll flip to in a moment will let me create 2 things, a property and a trigger. And a trigger is made up of other stuff, but that's basically the end of the demo. In a couple of minutes, I'm going to create a property and a trigger, and hopefully we'll see an email come through. All right, so here we have the screen in Reflex where we do the rest of it. So the event is, well, we've already covered what an event is. We've created this object called object name goes here. I should probably rename that. I'm horrible with naming things. Whoops. Oh, well, I can't rename it. I'm sure I can rename it. I've been able to rename pretty much everything in this tool. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a trigger and properties. Yeah. Before we do, just quick concepts. So properties are kind of like a measure. It's saying, hey, here's 10 columns in a table. Here's one column that I want, and it's going to default to a count, I think. Or, I want to do an average of a column over 10 seconds. So it's kind of like a Power BI measure or a KPI or a metric. That's what a property is. So let's create that now. So let's go new property. Probably name things. And so what we can see here is, once again, very similar to the Azure Stream Analytics transformation screen we saw before, all of the stuff. But as I said, notice before it was nested, I had to expand to get telemetry. I had to expand to get pretty cool. Already passes that for me. So this is a flattened JSON package. It's already flattened the JSON for me, which is just nice. It's just a nice quality of life sort of thing. I'm pretty sure Reflex did this. Maybe Event Streams did it. I don't know what tool did it exactly. We don't know. But at least in Reflex, we see everything flattened. And in this case, I'm actually going to select my magnometer X, which is basically anytime I go over a magnet, that number goes crazy. So I'm going to click that. And so there's my that, by the way, was when my phone timed out. Oh, there we go. That was when I had my phone on my charger. I kept putting on my charger. By the way, my charger's right here. So anytime you see a blip in this, so currently it's low because I'm holding my phone. This is about 15 seconds, maybe 20 seconds delayed for my phone. So I want this to sort of slow down a little bit. I'm looking at my X, it's a 7 right now. How's it changing? It's basically about a 7-ish. So that should hopefully be static pretty soon. Yeah, it's staying around about 0 on my phone, so that should be pretty 0. So now when I put it on here, it's now on my charger. I can see on my phone it's gone to negative 949. So we'll get. Oh, that's quick enough. Oh, there you go. Negative 949. So that's me literally physically putting my phone on my charger, and that's what we're seeing here. And obviously, how charts work. So that's my magnometer X. Pretty cool demo, right? So in theory, if I take this off, I don't know what it's going to do, but it should. Yeah, there we go. It's looking a lot faster than it did last time I demoed this. I'm very, very proud of this. So that's a property. And as you can see, I'm going to be a little bit more advanced. I'm going to average this. I'm going to average this over time. Yes, I got an average. So let's average this over the last 10 seconds. So I want the average of my X over the last 10 seconds. Just because when I get to the part of setting up a trigger, I don't want it to just blast me with emails. So yeah, let's hit save on this. So there's my property. Once again, it's a measure, it's a KPI. It's defining a bit of semantics on top of a column. You can't do multiple column things, guys. Of note, you can't reference 2 columns, add them together, which could be a challenge, right? So you may want to do some upstream transformations, but I mentioned very early on, this tool doesn't do a lot, but what it does really, really well. Both event streams and reflex. They don't do a lot, but they do. They have a very well-defined scope and they do it really, really well, which is exactly what you want for product development. So next and arguably last is triggers. So we've got data flowing through. We've defined a bit of a KPI, a bit of a metric. Well, we need to actually act upon that, and that's where a trigger comes in. So I'm going to select the thing, the property that it is. I'm going to select that. And then I'm going to, try and see if I can send myself an email. Cool. So there's my inbox. So we should see that come through in a few minutes once I set it up. So let's go new trigger up the top. Right. So we need to select the property that we just made. So an existing property. This is a property. That's that average of magnometer X over 10 seconds. That's that property. So we just define that. Very simple. Next, I'm going to choose this detection type. So I've selected my property, the one that I already made. Now I want to do some sort of detection rule on it. So let's go down here. There's lots of options, and I'll go through them in a second, but I want to first do, it's negative, wasn't it? So when it becomes less than negative 350, and you've got a few ways to do it. So I can have it, maybe it needs to be less than negative 50 for 5 messages, right? That would be number of tries. I don't know what stays is. Maybe it's time. Let's take a look. Yep, so it's time. So it stays less than negative 354 n minutes or seconds. But in this one here, I'm just going to do each time. So anytime it sends a message of negative 350, that's the detection. That's the detection rule. You generally don't want to do that. But whatever. So, and the last thing we need to do is we need to do some form of action down the bottom. And that's going to be, in this case, Outlook or Teams. But as I said very early on in this presentation, Power Automate is on the agenda. And when Power Automate comes out, that's like, I'm not even going to use this. I'm just going to use Power Automate to send an email. I'm just going to use Power Automate to send a Teams message, right? So Power Automate's the be all and end all of automation. What we want to do is we want to select the action, email. It just comes up with a very generic subject body. It's not Power Automate. Not yet. Let's hit save. And so what I would do want to highlight though is it does actually have a scenario analysis. So this was before I actually set up the detection, I'm pretty sure. Because I set up like the detection right here, I think. But it's when I set this rule, it went back in time and said, okay, if this rule was set up, this is what would have triggered. So it's kind of cool for actually testing it while you're developing. So this is my last email. That's me. It's this meeting right now. So in theory, if I click start at the top, be bad if this didn't work. All right, so everything's up and running. Now I should be able to put my phone on here. I'll leave it there for negative 1,000. So I'm saying negative 1,000 for X. Give it a few seconds. I'll take that off. Now, in theory, if I'm good at my job, we should see emails come through, at least one email. Now, just be aware, 5 minutes, good. So just be aware that there is a delay, there is a lag right now by design. There is a delay between this trigger actually triggering and the action being sent. It's about 1 minute. So Will Thompson, who owns this, did say to me that will change in the future, but there is a by design built-in delay. Kind of sucks for a demo. It would be nice to see all these pop-ups appear, but it is what it is. So in theory, in about 30 seconds or so, I should receive an email. And Exchange Outlook is also adding a delay too, of probably about 30 seconds. So anyway, I'll give that a minute. I'll flip back to my inbox, and as we can see though, here is when I put my phone on the charger, that big trough, and in theory, there's a detection. We see a blip. So in theory, we should have had one, at least. I should receive one email. I've actually seen multiple come through. So it's still a little bit quirky. So I'm just going to do a bit of a song and dance for a little bit because it does take a couple of minutes. So I'll throw out the questions. Any questions on anything you've seen right now around reflex or event streams? You're first. Yep. So is this a standalone tool? Can it be integrated with other tools?
Like, can I call this from the company?
No, there's no plans on the roadmap that I've seen for it called Data Factory, but you could call it Power Automate, and Power Automate could do that. But let's back up a little bit. Let's think about what this tool is. Think about data quality. If the count of nulls in a column is greater than X, then do something. Rerun the pipeline. Right? Perfect use case for Data Factory. So yes, those use cases will come through eventually. We can't technically do them right now though, but data quality is one. Fantastic use case that people are thinking about for this. So that's a good sort of tie into Data Factory. There's another question. Yeah.
Publish it in like a report or it is just looking what's good.
Can we publish this into a Power BI app? You said an app.
Oh, yeah.
So Power BI apps sort of combine dashboards, reports, all that sort of good stuff into a nice neat package. No, not right now. In fact, that's the same story for a lot of things in Fabric right now. You can't publish them into a nice neat single package of an app. Though that is on the backlog. Yes.
What do you think he was?
So where do I keep what?
Words.
So where do I keep the alerts as a part of Fabric called the Azure ecosystem? So this is all in Fabric, which technically is all Azure behind the scenes, but for all intents and purposes, it is not Azure. So all this stuff here is in the world of Fabric, the magical world of Fabric.
So you won't be able to see them to but if I go to Azure, like stuff.
So the question is, can we maybe integrate Azure into what I've demonstrated today? Broadly speaking, there are no good APIs right now publicly available in Fabric, and the only way to do that would be through an API. So APIs coming soon as shortcut creation in OneLake. So that's very good for metadata-driven pipelines, where I gave the presentation of metadata-driven pipelines. And shortcut creation through a metadata-driven pipeline is critical. That is on the short-term roadmap. Entering private preview in a few weeks. There are also other APIs coming out as well for everything, obviously around SDLC and metadata-driven pipelines too. Let me see, mate. I think I've delayed enough. Dang it. Let me just close it and reopen it. When in doubt, turn it off and on again. Maybe I didn't leave it on there long enough. But in theory, I should have received an email, and it did work last night when I tested this. No, of course, it did work last night when I tested this, but it's not working right now. I probably should have left it on my charger for a little bit longer, but that's effectively what you're going to see. Just like waiting. You'll see something like what would render maybe in a few minutes. Maybe that's my issue. Maybe my Outlook's not working. Oh, there we go. So this is what I was testing last night. 10:30 p.m. as you do before a presentation, and this is an example of what you'd receive. Now, in this scenario, Reflex actually Reflex told me I'd receive 5 notifications, but I actually received 7. So what the long story, the pitch is basically whatever that number is, trust it with a grain of salt. Like if it says 1 here, I had 5. It said 5 last night, but I've received 7 emails. So I'm not seeing a lot of consistency between how many triggers it says it actually triggered versus how many it actually triggered, unfortunately. Anyway, I'll leave it on here and hopefully I'll get some emails coming through soon. And yeah. All right, so let's go back here. I think I've only got 2 minutes left. So just to quickly recap, and I'll be here for questions after. Yeah, we went through quite a lot today from scratch. I had the telemetry already set up, obviously. I went through in Azure IoT, once again, not the point of this presentation, but I already had the device made. The cake was baked for my device. I didn't need to be, honestly, just saves 5 minutes. But anyway, I made event stream and said, hey, IoT, anytime telemetry comes into you, send it to event stream. We made a custom app, which is that event hub endpoint. I copied that connection stream and put it in the destination, so it knew where to send it. Didn't have time to do the lakehouse endpoint. Maybe I can do it if anyone's interested. We made just the direct data activator endpoint. And that took us all the way over here. And we went through and we had that event coming through, which is all of my iPhone telemetry. I made an object, which is sort of like the canvas for creating the rest of everything. I defined that measure, which I think is up on there. It's an average of magnometer over 10 seconds, average count of, no, average of the X over 10 seconds. I selected that as my trigger. I had that detection threshold. And yeah, and I should have received an email, but I didn't, which is a bit of a shame for it to end the demo. So guys, we're pretty much at time now. I'll pause for a couple of questions, but then we can wrap it up in about 2 or 3 minutes. Yes. Yeah, there's a lot that you pretty much every permutation of stuff you can do, you can do. So the question was, what are the options? There's a lot of options. These have changed a little bit over the last few weeks, but there's a lot of options. Right, guys. Well, thank you very much for the presentation. I'm going to go to my Outlook one more time and scroll up, and nothing is there, of course. Thank you very much for your time, guys. I hope you enjoy the presentation. Cool. I'll be here for questions if you have any.
The data quality aspect would be very handy. It's especially from what we're working on, where you're regularly manually check all the source data that you refresh quickly before you yes, you don't have to do that.
Yeah, you can query the SQL Server scheme,
So can you,
property tables to figure out like when a table was last refreshed.
yeah, can you do more, like, so say I have a SQL script, can I do a checklist script that's doing conditions, say where it's that.
No, right now. You probably no, you can't. No, you're really limited to this drop-down box in terms of the logic you can do. It's pretty rudimentary. So you can't like put a SQL script in here and say if the result of the SQL script is 5.
But can you do it earlier on?
Add it as a physical column and then do this on it. Yeah,
Something like that.
exactly. So for example, a good example is 2 columns. If you need to do logic on 2 columns, these will never work.
Yeah,
So you need to do something upstream.
so you'd have to do your check before and then do a count. If it's greater than 1, obviously you have errors here. Redo this or
Spot
greater
on.
than 10 or something like that.
Yeah, spot on, man. Yeah.
Okay.
Come on, email.
The other
Oh, it worked. It worked. Sorry. There we go. Thank you. Hey. There we go.
The other thing for that again, there's a view option.
Yeah.
You were trying to share make your camera big.
Oh, was it? Oh, damn. I
Yeah.
feel bad.
Yeah, it's at the top, right? That's
Yeah,
top
see
buttons,
view up at the top. Should be able to. And then
I think when you were presenting, it actually shows up at the top.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Screen movie. I don't know. That's